Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, August 8th through Sunday, August 14th, 2022. This week, the moon will be traveling from Sagittarius to Aries, and we'll actually get a full moon at 19 degrees of Aquarius, so of course that's going to be a big event. That will happen on Thursday, August 11th, so if you do want to just skip to that day, I do have timestamps in the description. If you are just here to listen to my take on the full moon, you can jump to that day. And you might want to do that too, because another thing that's happening Thursday, August 11th is Venus is entering Leo. That's probably the other major headline for this week. So that's, of course, a big shift. Venus has been in Cancer, so we've been more favoring the familiar and things that are close to us. So we're going to be mixing it up a little bit. As Venus moves into Leo, we're going to be more, proud with our desire, more outgoing, more energetic. So that's going to be definitely a shift there. And this isn't as much of a major headline, but I really wanted to take note that we do have multiple aspects this week indicating financial stress, financial change, economic changes coming. None of these on their own would be necessarily a really big deal, but combining all of these, Sun opposing Saturn, Venus opposing Pluto, Sun squaring the nodes, Sun squaring Uranus, and more importantly, that triple conjunction that we just had, that we're just kind of coming off of from last week, Mars, Uranus, and North Node all conjunct in Taurus. That's going to be highlighted as Sun kind of squares this now broken up triple conjunction. So all of this is to say that there are major changes happening economically. We're shifting direction. I don't want to get too into that, but we are in a very strange time economically right now. In some aspects it looks really positive, really strong economic activity, and in other areas not nearly as much. So it's kind of dicey. There's a weird situation happening right now, and it's really clear looking at the astrology. But I want to get into it in more detail, so let's just start the day by day here. So we start out Monday, August 8th with the moon in Sagittarius. I really like this for a Monday, especially for a Monday morning. We've got both the sun and the moon in fire signs. So, what perfect day, what better day to have such fiery energy than Monday when you're kind of starting everything, initiating everything. That's what the fire signs are great for. And Leo and Sagittarius in particular, where the sun and the moon are, these are two very upbeat, jovial signs. So not only are they energetic enough for us to kind of start the week and kind of plunge into whatever we're doing, but we can do so in kind of an upbeat, maybe a somewhat cheerful way. The moon is still coming off of that trine it just made to the sun, so we still have these like positive, harmonious, kind of strong, good vibes here. That does shift about midday though, so it looks like just after noon Eastern Standard Time, moon does leave Sagittarius and it enters Capricorn. I always say this is one of the most major shifts for any planet to do, because this shift goes from Sagittarius, which is maybe the most optimistic or one of the most optimistic signs, to Capricorn, which is one of the most pessimistic or cynical. Sagittarius is more kind of a party animal energy, and then Capricorn is more thinking about the future, planning long term and all that. So that is a huge shift. I definitely don't hate this for a Monday though, for a work day where we are presumably wanting to be productive and all of that. I think having moon in Capricorn can be good. This is a somewhat uncomfortable placement to have because moon is in detriment in Capricorn, but that feeling of discomfort can be motivating. It can motivate us to be productive, to do all these Capricorn things of planning for the future and strategizing and things like that. So I actually don't hate this energy. I think it works pretty well. It may be something to kind of adjust to. So like it can be kind of maybe disheartening when you feel that shift going from Sagittarius to Capricorn. It's kind of a rude awakening, so to speak. But again, we can use that energy to motivate us with whatever we're doing to be productive. We do have one aspect on Monday, so that would be Sun at 16 degrees Leo, making a trine to Chiron at 16 degrees Aries. I kind of like this as well. Chiron and Aries, if you hear my forecast, you probably heard my take on that a million times already. But since 2018, it's been kind of provoking us. It's been, like stirring the coals or stirring the pot, stirring the fire, so to speak, making us all a little bit more sensitive and easily offended, but also exploring our own like personal wounds and traumas and maybe being more vocal about all that. So when we have the sun in Leo trining that energy, making this harmonious aspect, I think this is good for being, very firm and set with ourselves. Sun in Leo is a fixed energy, it's fixed fire. So we can maybe approach things with, a little bit of warmth and openness with these fire energies, but also, being very firm as well. I mostly see this affecting you if you have planets around, let's say, 14 to 18 degrees of the, let's say, the fire signs, especially. This will trine you, so you may have some positive, some breakthrough happening with your something like therapeutic, something working on your past, something that may have happened to you a long time ago, emotions or trauma that you've had. You may make progress on in dealing with that. Part of that could be helping other people, or maybe someone helping you, something along those lines. But Chiron is kind of a comet. It's not as potent necessarily as the other planets, so I mostly see this being strong for you again if you have placements that aspect this aspect, if that makes sense. Well, let's move forward to Tuesday, August 9th. So Tuesday, August 9th, we have Moon cruising through Capricorn. I'm sorry, I forgot to change the day here. So Moon is just continuing through Capricorn, so we can continue those kind of strong, productive vibes, thinking about the long term and all that we started on Monday. And we have one aspect happening on Tuesday as well, so that would be Venus opposing Pluto. Venus, that will happen when Venus is at 26 degrees Cancer opposing Pluto at 26 degrees Capricorn. So technically speaking, that'll happen in the morning Eastern Standard Time. This is one of those aspects I listed off at the beginning that, to me, indicates the potential for financial change. Why do I say that? Well, that's because Venus, really more than any other planet, I think has to do with money. Like if you want to look to a planet for, seeing how our money is in terms of like resources we have on hand, our assets that we have physically in our immediate vicinity, like money in our wallet is the example I always use. Venus shows kind of the energy of that. And opposing Pluto and Capricorn has to do with the whole structure of society, the hierarchy of everything, the government and the laws, the economy and things like that. So when we have this opposition, it shows that we're kind of on different pages. Like where we're at individually as individuals is very different than where we are at collectively, especially again in terms of money and resources. There's some kind of clash there. We're not on the same page. We're moving in different directions maybe. I think with Venus in Cancer, and especially making this opposition to Pluto, we may be very conservative in how we're spending money, very careful. We're kind of just selecting, I only want to spend my money on something I already know, something I'm already familiar with that I know will be a good investment. We're not prone to taking risks right now. We're not all wild. This is one thing that I think is in common between the individual level as well as the collective level. It's just that individually it's much more personal. With Venus and Cancer, we want to do what's right for ourselves and for our families. There's this kind of emotional connotation to it. This, kind of bringing it in, constricting a little bit. Whereas Pluto and Capricorn is more domineering, or it's more top down. Trying to put on the pressure, put on some kind of control, like the. I think this kind of ticks off on one theme that I've been noticing, which is I think our the structures of our society, like the governments and such, are really grasping for control right now. And right now they are still succeeding in keeping some control, but just kind of barely. We're seeing the very end of this phase in terms of this top-down heavy control. It's beginning to start to slip through their fingers. So this is just one kind of small crack, I think. It's like there's this pillar or this wall or something that's holding up this structure. I'm almost picturing like a dam, I guess. And I don't know what the water would be in this case. I guess the water behind the dam would be just change or lack of structure in general. I guess that's kind of what water ends up being. I guess this is a good analogy now that I think about it. And in the wall is cracking, the dam is cracking, and this aspect is just one small kind of crack. It's just one more crack adding up, but there's a whole bunch of cracks in this dam. It's just one small thing indicating we're just not on the same page as our overlords, so to speak, especially economically. So yeah, that's just one thing I wanted to point out. And it will be interesting, especially going to Wednesday, because the moon will go over this. Speaking of that, let's just go to Wednesday, August 10th right now. Okay, so this is the chart for Wednesday, August 10th, around noon Eastern Standard Time. And here you can see what I'm talking about. Right about midday, the moon crosses over Pluto as Venus is still within orb of this opposition to Pluto. And then the moon crosses over Pluto at, almost that same time. Moon is like maybe a day late or just a few hours late. So it's still within range to, the moon is still within range to conjoin Pluto as Venus is opposing Pluto and the moon now. So that just means that this brings way more of a focus to this whole dynamic. It's hard for me to say exactly what to make of this, but I see economic turbulence, economic changes. I see governments not being on the same page as their citizens, in terms of whatever. It's almost like there have been economic changes, and the way the masses are reacting is very different than how the governments are reacting, or the leaders, or whoever's at the top, so to speak. It's almost like we're reacting in completely opposite kind of ways here, if that makes sense. And the people know that. The people can very much sense that with Moon here involved. So I think there's this like awkward moment of like, oh, you're doing that, I was doing this other thing. I didn't. We're not on the same page. It's just it's awkward, and again, it's just one small crack. It's part of something much larger that's happening right now, a big global shift, I think. But on a more mundane level, Moon continues through Capricorn for the first half of the day, and then it enters Aquarius, just after making this aspect around midday Eastern Standard Time. Either way, the Moon is going to be in Saturn ruled signs all day on Wednesday, so we are maybe a little bit more disciplined, or thinking about the long term, thinking about the big picture, thinking holistically. I think that's part of what triggers this whole financial thing. It's like, we are thinking about our families, about, our own personal kind of subjective interests with Venus in Cancer, especially financially. But at the same time, with Moon transiting these Saturnian signs of Capricorn and Aquarius, we're also, planning about the long term. Cancer is no stranger to this either. Cancer has foresight. Cancer wants to, use its intuition and its emotion to plan for the future, or to sense the future. So I think all these energies, it's very different than Sun in Leo. Like, we are still in Leo season, which is typically such a happy, let's just relax kind of time. Let's go on a vacation or something. That is setting like the general tone in the background, but then there's all these kind of other aspects going on in other transits that are showing that I think we are abnormally much more focused on money and the long term right now than we otherwise would be this time of year. It's almost like it's late fall or winter. It's almost like the middle of winter, where we're thinking much more holistically and thinking about more complex, abstract themes, compared to how we would usually be feeling in midsummer in the Northern Hemisphere. One aspect that I haven't mentioned yet for Wednesday, August 10th, and this is also one that I was saying indicates financial change, economic change. Sun at 18 degrees Leo makes a T-square with the nodes at 18 degrees Taurus and Scorpio. So it looks like this has happened in the AM Eastern Standard Time for Wednesday, August 10th still. Okay, so why do I say this would be an economic change? So the nodes, like I've said before, the nodes are in Taurus and Scorpio. This axis deals with finances more than anything. Both Taurus and Scorpio are two sides of the same coin, so to speak, no pun intended, but that deal with possession and investment. So yes, a lot of that is emotional. What do we invest in emotionally, or are we possessive emotionally over our relationships and things of that nature? But it's also financial. What are our literal financial investments? What does our money look like in terms of the resources we have on hand, symbolized by Taurus, but also our more kind of deeper investments, or stocks, or our debt. If you have like credit card debt, or if you have stocks, or if you have money in the bank, all that is going to be Scorpio type of stuff. So Either way, these are two sides of the same coin of finances, investments, etc. Basically what it has to do is how are we supporting ourselves. So that's why it is both emotional as well as financial. How are we supporting ourselves and making sure that we are stable in this world? That's what this axis represents. And when you have Sun squaring these nodes, especially just after this triple conjunction happened at the North Node in Taurus, this means we're at some kind of turning point. We're halfway in between the eclipse seasons, the one that happened back in May, and then the next one that will happen around November, I believe, or maybe late October. We're just halfway in between both of these. So halfway in between the eclipse seasons, we get a turning point, a checkpoint. There's this little shift. It's not nearly as dramatic as the eclipse seasons themselves, where everything just goes up in the air and just changes really dramatically. But this is still an important marker, and that's why I always mention if, especially the sun or an inner planet cross this point where they square the nodes, because it is a T-square, and especially since we have Uranus and Mars still within orb of that conjunction to the North Node, like I said in the last week's forecast, we just had this aspect showing a lot of volatility with the markets and with the economy, with money, with resources, commodities. And having the sun square that, it's adding fuel to the fire, literally, because the sun is in a fire sign, but also because this square aspect is harsh, it's contentious, it's pushing us to make change because our environment has changed. We have to be different now. We have to be active. We have to do something. And I think sun being in Leo, it's a fire sign anyway. It's very active, so it just adds to all that. So I know that was kind of rambly, but all that is to say, Wednesday, August 10th, I would really mark for some kind of financial change or upset, even more so than Tuesday. Tuesday, we had that Venus opposing Pluto, but Wednesday especially, this square, like sun sets the pace for the day. It sets the tone. Sun is literally the center of the solar system. So when you have that square, this really, contentious, dramatic economic type of aspect, I would expect the unexpected. Sun is squaring Uranus Wednesday and technically Thursday, I guess. But, with Uranus, you can expect the unexpected. Mars makes things dramatic. Nodes change everything. The nodes of fate kind of, it's almost like Wheel of Fortune energy. Like you never know where you're going to land. Kind of like the tarot card, Wheel of Fortune. So yeah, expect the unexpected. Maybe changes with finances, but also changes in our personal relationships as well. Especially if you have any planets in the fixed signs, particularly around halfway. So I would say if we give it an orb of 3 degrees, it would be between 15 and 21 degrees of any of the fixed signs, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, or Taurus. If you have major planets around there, major points in those areas, this will affect you very dramatically. You may have to make a major life decision. You may be at a crossroads right now. You may have to change your job or change your income, maybe make a major change with a personal relationship, something of that nature. And for the rest of us as well, we will experience this crossroads and this major kind of change, this turning point as well. Okay, and then later in the day, Moon does enter Aquarius, so things get a little bit lighter, but they also get more intense because we are stepping into the zone of the full moon. Moon is already beginning to oppose the sun here, so things are kind of heating up a little bit. Thursday, August 11th. Now Moon is not only in Aquarius, but it actually does make that exact opposition to the sun, so this will be the day of the full moon in Aquarius. I'll cover that first, just in case you're just here for that analysis. So the full moon will be at 19 degrees Aquarius, opposing the sun at 19 degrees Leo. It happens in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time, and it does it squares the nodes. It does make a major aspect here. This is a big deal. I was just talking about how the sun was squaring the nodes, and then now the moon steps into the scene here, steps into this, I guess it would be a grand cross, a grand fixed cross, if you want to call it that. So in other words, the North Node is in Taurus, South Node is in Scorpio, Sun in Leo, Moon in Aquarius. These are all making this grand cross here. So not only is the moon opposing the sun, but they're also each squaring the nodes. Okay, so again, this points to major economic changes. It's not just about the sun, or it's not just about the Leo Aquarius axis, like a typical Aquarius full moon would be. We're also directly involving the Taurus Scorpio axis as well. So let me just first talk about what a normal kind of Aquarius full moon would be, and then I'll talk about how this nodal axis is coming into play as well. So Aquarius full moon is combining, obviously Aquarius moon with Leo sun. This is the axis that deals with kind of the culmination. I think this deals with party energy, and let's just be ourselves, be our raw selves. Let's be eccentric. Let's not be afraid to really express ourselves in a truly unique way. That's what both Leo and Aquarius deal with. This is an air full moon with a fire sun, so this is one of the more kind of active full moons. I think we can all notice that people are more riled up, more active for any kind of full moon, but this is especially true for air or fire full moons in my experience. So we can expect the unexpected. Aquarius is kind of party energy. It's eccentric. It's wild. It's also intellectual. So we can be exploring maybe strange ideas or philosophies. We can be just generally wild. I like to keep my analyses kind of general on full moons because I feel like that's the way it's most vividly experienced. This is the energy of parties, of culminations. I know it's Thursday, so it's still kind of the middle of the week, but people will be up later. Children and pets especially will be more wound up and kind of crazy, more active. We're just really exploring the energies of culmination. I think especially not only with full moons in general, but also especially with this particular full moon, because Leo and Aquarius are kind of the final product of the whole zodiac, in my opinion. Aquarius is the last sign before Pisces, which ends it all. Pisces closes everything out. But right before that close, before that yin phase, you get Aquarius, which is the major, it's the last yang sign. It's the last outgoing sign. It's the last fixed sign. So I would say it's kind of the final product. So it does tend to be kind of larger than life. The Aquarius moon still wants us to be objective and holistic and rational. It's intellectual. It's ruled by Saturn. These energies can be heavy and stoic and very objective, maybe kind of emotionally detached at times, but at the same time there is this other Uranian side to it as well, this aspect that wants to just be wild and let's just forget everything and do whatever we want, kind of freedom, liberation, revolution, etc. So that's where it gets really interesting when you take into account that this full moon squares the nodes. Nodes, again, which I've talked about, really concerning major changes happening with our finances and how we support ourselves, both financially as well as emotionally. So when that clashes with the full moon, and especially because we're mixing all these fixed signs, we're mixing all the fixed signs. Fixed signs don't really mix well with other energies. They are themselves. That's it. It's simple. It's straightforward with the fixed signs. They don't change for anybody. They don't really mix with other energies. They just are their authentic selves, for better or for worse. So when we combine all the fixed signs that don't really combine very well, it does create this kind of explosion or this clash. I really want to stress again that if anyone has any planets, any major stuff in their chart that is within orb of any of the fixed signs, around, I would say even like 10 to maybe 10 to 26-ish degrees of any of the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, this is you that's changing. You are at a crossroads. You have to choose between maybe multiple options. This I would point to right now being a potential time for major life changes for you. But for the rest of us as well, we're redefining how do we express ourselves, our own identities, how do we express our identities, what are our values, what do we invest in, all of these things that are typically very stable and consistent are now changing dramatically. So I know that was rambly and covered a lot of areas, but when you're mixing these four different signs, each one with a different element, but each one all fixed, we are mixing a lot of different things together. Mostly it's about self-expression and how do we support ourselves. a lot of it is economic with, the moon and the sun squaring this little group here, Mars, Uranus, North Node, and Taurus. I think that's honestly the focal point, even though that's not the full moon necessarily, but both the sun and the full moon are squaring this cluster here. So to me, that's what I look out for the most. That's what's making this not just a full moon, but more than that. That's what is making this like potentially very life changing. Not just for the fixed signs, but for all of us as well. Okay, that was a lot. I have more to say about Thursday though. So okay, so the next big thing is we do have Venus entering Leo today. So it looks like it happens in the evening or afternoon Eastern Standard Time. This is a much more bold, fiery energy. We have completed the shift now of the inner planets switching from Cancer to Leo. So we now have no planets in Cancer at all. And suddenly the chart looks a little bit more fiery with Sun and Venus in Leo. I do really love this just because, Sun is in domicile in Leo, Mercury is exalted in Virgo, and Venus does pretty well in Leo. I would say it's more naturally strong in Leo than it is Cancer. Venus is in joy in the fifth house. Fifth house has parallels to Leo, so I kind of consider Venus in joy in Leo. So this means this is the most fun, enjoyable, pleasant sign for Venus to be in, if that makes sense. Just because when Venus is in Leo, we're very sure of ourselves. We're very sure of what we find pleasurable and how we want to express ourselves. Things become kind of simple. Like we know what we want, and we want to just go out and get it. We're maybe a little bit selfish or self-focused at times, but we're also very generous as well. So all in all, I think Venus in Leo is very fun, kind of warm energy. Yeah, and we can at least know very much what we want. Interestingly, since we have a theme lately about economic stuff going on, Venus in Leo is more of a optimistic energy than Venus in Cancer. When any planets are in yin signs, so that would be water or earth, economically we're more likely to contract. We're more likely to be careful with our money, not spend so much, so that can result in economic contraction. Versus when planets are in yang signs, we're less frugal. We're more active. We want to spend more. We want to be more outgoing. Maybe not quite so careful with our money. More just, I don't know, spontaneous or what have you. So that of course does the opposite. It results in economic expansion, if you will. I don't know the precise term, but you know what I'm saying. So Venus, again, which rules kind of money in our pocket, going to Leo, that may make us more willing to spend. So that could get us through this weird economic time. I know that inflation is very high, obviously. Unemployment is very down, though. So we're in this kind of weird period where if people start spending more, not that I'm advocating that necessarily, but I'm just saying if they did, then we would be in generally good economic times. But if we continue to not spend as much, and that's where these large companies will start to lay off workers, and then that creates this whole cycle of economic recession. So Venus entering Leo, I could see maybe an indicator for people, spending more, being more active. A lot of people just got new jobs, so maybe that's part of it. But yeah, that is one potential indicator. We're more prone to generosity or treating ourselves with Venus in Leo, to kind of make a long story short. And then two other aspects that are not as big. Well, we have Mars sextiling Neptune, Mars at 24 degrees Taurus, sextiling Neptune at 24 degrees Pisces. We also have the Sun squaring Uranus, which I kind of already talked about. I really incorporated that into the full moon, so I'm kind of just going to skip over that. We really already talked about that earlier. But Mars sextiling Neptune, honestly, I think it's going to just fade into the background. We have so much other stuff happening on Thursday, with this full moon squaring the nodes and all that stuff. You're only going to notice Mars sextiling Neptune maybe just briefly, maybe at one moment of the day. Sextiles can be fleeting. Yes, they are harmonious energies, but they're not super strong. It's probably the weakest of the major aspects, I would say, or major angles. So you're mostly going to notice this maybe just kind of in a fleeting temporary moment of the day, or if you happen to have planets, especially right around 24 degrees of Pisces or Taurus, that's where you'll especially notice this. But it does get really kind of wild when we combine Mars with Neptune in general. Mars being so volatile, and it's the planet of masculinity and drive and testosterone. Well, it usually ends up being about like ambition and sex, kind of. And then we're mixing that with Neptune, which is all about fantasy and, escapism and intuition and spirituality, especially in Pisces. So when we're combining these energies, I think it's pretty kind of weird, for lack of a better word, especially because Mars is in detriment in Taurus. Mars is kind of debilitated there, so it's not necessarily the most active or ambitious Mars sign to be in. We're not super fiercely independent right now, or, I think as a whole, collectively, we're not all like running each other over to follow our own personal goals and ambitions or what have you. We're a little tiny bit more complacent with Mars and Taurus. And now when we incorporate the sextile to Neptune and Pisces, I think this could be a good day for maybe being ambitious about spirituality or ambitious about resting, which I know that's kind of opposite or contradictory, but that's sort of what happens when you have planets in detriment. So we may be fighting for peace, fighting to keep the peace, or, ambitious about our rest, ambitious about taking time off, about the slow life. Taurus likes it slow. Neptune and Pisces is more about retreating or escaping, just exploring our own feelings, thoughts, being more reflective and maybe more artistic or creative, spiritual, etc. So that's kind of where our collective ambition is. It's honestly not really ambitious. It's more, let's kind of escape. Let's take our time. So I think that's really interesting. I think this could especially be great for, just taking our time in general. We're not wanting to rush things. We're, even with Venus and Leo, where we're wanting to treat ourselves and be spontaneous, we're still not really being super dramatic or impulsive, I think, with Mars in Taurus, especially sextiling Neptune. So I think that's actually good. Like, honestly, I feel this is a little bit maybe subjective, but I feel like the people or the masses are generally in a good place, like, mentally speaking. I don't see us all like panicking or being super wild or crazy. Like, of course, people are crazy. That's always true. But you get what I'm saying, though. Like, as a whole, for the current time, as we are navigating these financially unstable times, I think we are in a relatively good place as much as the masses kind of can be. We're wanting to keep it slow. Maybe that slow, cautious approach in our current capitalist system isn't the best for, prompting economic growth necessarily, but I think it is best for doing what's right for us personally, making sure we use our finances wisely and invest in the right things. So in this sextile to Neptune, I actually kind of like it's maybe adding some intuition with what we're doing with our time, money, resources, etc. Okay, that was a lot for Thursday. There's by far more happening on Thursday than any other day, but I do have some stuff to talk about for the other days here. So Friday, we're coming off of that full moon. Moon is in Aquarius the first half of the day and then enters Pisces around noon Eastern Standard Time. It's kind of convenient for me that lately the moon has been entering signs around noon. It's kind of nice for me, but it's also nice for us as a collective. The moon, I think, leaving Aquarius and entering Pisces. Don't get me wrong, I love a good full moon. I love some Aquarius energies. That was really wild and fun and active on Thursday, I think, especially. But at the same time, you can have too much of a good thing. I think it'll be a nice kind of relief Friday when the moon enters Pisces and things kind of wind down a little bit. Especially combining Sun and Leo with moon and Pisces. I'm almost picturing, this is kind of a weird thing, but I'm almost picturing like Southern culture, like Southern hospitality, because combining Leo Sun with Pisces Moon, these are really warm energies, but they're kind of very gentle, I think, and more just easygoing, like laid back a little bit. They can be maybe a little bit wild at times because they're somewhat free-spirited. They wear their heart on their sleeves. But all in all, I think this is a more relaxed, kind of laid-back sort of vibe as we get into the PM hours of Friday. And this is a big shift too, because I think the moon just went through such intense energies going through Capricorn where it was in detriment, and then Aquarius where it was still, Aquarius is kind of a weird sign for the moon. It's still in a Saturn ruled sign, and then we had the full moon squaring the nodes, and then moon crossed over Saturn. So like we just went through a lot of kind of harsh energies where we had to maybe put our feelings aside for a lot of the week and do what had to be done. We had to prioritize the future and therefore not prioritize how we felt in the current moment. So all that is good, when we have to do it. We have to man up or woman up or what have you, and get what needs to be done. But at the same time, or on the other hand, I think it'll be nice winding down on Friday, having the moon enter Pisces, where we can kind of just relax. We can go back to the subjective, like, okay, how do I feel right now? Like, let's take care of that too, because that's equally important, rather than just planning and strategizing and dealing with these intense energies. You know what I'm saying? So it gets a lot more relaxed on a Friday, is what I'm trying to say. Some weekends look better for resting, and some look better for playing. Astrologically, of course. And for this, I almost feel like we just get a breath of fresh air on Friday, where the energies get a little bit less intense. We can just kind of relax a little bit, do whatever we feel like in the moment. This week looks really edgy, so I think these more comforting vibes, these warm, kind of fun vibes of Leo Sun with Pisces Moon will be much needed on Friday as we kind of gear up for this slower paced weekend. Let's go to Saturday, August 13th. So Moon continues through Pisces. Again, this is really nice. Moon is somewhat unaspected. It does sextile, North Node, Uranus about midday, but this is a sextile. Again, this is one of the, probably the lightest aspect that you'll hear me talk about in these forecasts. Saturday, the Moon does oppose Mercury, so that can be a little bit confusing. With Virgo, Pisces oppositions, especially Mercury and Moon, which are, Moon is technically not at home in Pisces, but I think it kind of is. It's a sign that embodies a lot of the same themes of the Moon. So Mercury is very much at home in Virgo. I would say Moon is at home in Pisces, and then they're opposing, they're contrasting. We're dealing with this whole axis here. The Virgo-Pisces axis deals with health, physical health, mental health. These are also two signs that have to do with integration. They both are about conclusions, about endings. Virgo is ending summer, but also the first half of the zodiac. And Pisces is ending winter, but also the entire zodiac. It's the very last sign. So these signs really have to do with integrating, with like pausing, reflecting. Virgo wants to organize our thoughts. Pisces is about organizing our thoughts too. It's just in a more subconscious, kind of spiritual way. So on the one hand, I think this opposition can make you kind of crazy, especially if you're trying to be really productive and really, active, and you may just kind of feel some burnout because, Mercury is the mental energy, Moon is the emotional energy, and they're just in two completely different places right now. So if you're trying to do, it could be easy to overstimulate yourself and bring yourself to mental exhaustion with this aspect. But on the other hand, I think if you take advantage of this and maybe take some time to just pause and reflect or do something with your hands, that's where there's this interesting connection between Virgo and Pisces. Because if you do these more mundane activities like sewing, or it could be like chores even, like gardening or dishes or something, maybe put on some music in the background, even though it's these kind of mundane activities, which is typically Virgo, this is what actually activates intuition. Relaxing your mind, doing something with your hands like cooking or something, that's what activates and unlocks the intuition, because it's basically how we integrate. So that is what I would kind of advise to do to capitalize on this Virgo Pisces opposition. It's not a super big deal, but it was definitely something worth mentioning, I think. These are both very fast moving planets, so it really just applies to Saturday. But otherwise, going back again to the Pisces moon, I do like this just because at this point, now that we don't have any Cancer planets, the chart is looking a little devoid of water. So having that Pisces moon just adds a little bit of, that nurturing, emotional, sensitive kind of energy to things. We still are kind of lacking air, so really this whole week I think things can feel intense because the only air we're gonna get for the most part is the full moon in Aquarius, which is this big, explosion, this big event. So so all week things can be kind of pressurized, but at least it's more relaxed on the weekend. Lastly, on Sunday, August 14th, Moon will enter Aries. Looks like early afternoon Eastern Standard Time. Um, and this is, of course, a major shift, switching from Pisces to Aries. I still like this, though. We had these really calm, relaxed vibes for most of the weekend with Moon and Pisces. But it continues to be a strong, easygoing, positive type of vibe with Moon entering Aries, just because Moon is going to eventually step into a trine with the Sun in just a couple days, looks like. So Moon being in the fiery sign of Aries, it complements Sun and Leo very nicely. These are two fire energies; they go very well together. So Sunday evening we could actually be a little bit more energetic, maybe, which I know is kind of odd for a Sunday evening, but we may be more active, or maybe especially if we've rested a lot Saturday and Sunday morning, which I would kind of advise. Sunday evening we may kind of have a little spur of the moment kind of burst of energy, maybe wanting to do something physical. The fire signs love physical activity, so maybe something like that could be good on Sunday. We do have two aspects. That would be Mars at 26 degrees Taurus, trining Pluto at 26 degrees Capricorn. I didn't list this in the aspects that could trigger financial change, but I suppose this would definitely fit the bill as well. Both Mars and Pluto are close to the end of their respective Earth signs, which of course have to do with not only money and finances, but also the structure of our lives and of society. So having this trine, it adds a little bit of girthiness or like structure. We may have some kind of stability. Again, Mars being in detriment in Taurus is not the worst thing in the world. Mars is a malefic energy, so if we just kind of like tone it down a little bit, keep it in detriment in Taurus, yes, we may be a little bit devoid of ambition or drive, but at the same time, we may also have less physical accidents with Mars just a tiny bit sedated like that. And when Mars makes this strong, easy communication to Pluto in Capricorn, it shows that there is harmony in terms of how our individual drives and passions fit with the larger structure of society. So we may, of course, this is a general thing we're talking about here. Everyone's situation is different, but generally speaking, we may actually find it somewhat easy to express ourselves or implement our goals and plans on Sunday. Sunday could also be a really great day for making plans, making goals, having Mars, the planet of drive and goals, kind of trining Pluto, which has to do with our instincts and our deepest kind of desires. Being in Capricorn, Pluto is pushing us to, plan things and to get really serious about where we are in the world. So having this aspect between Mars and Pluto and Capricorn, I think could be really good for goal setting or making a plan, or maybe achieving something, getting some productivity done toward our goals. And very last thing, we do have Sun opposing Saturn today. Sun at 21 degrees Leo, opposing Saturn at 21 degrees Aquarius. This I did list off as a potential shift for the economy, just because Saturn in Aquarius is ruling kind of our authority figures, our leaders, our government, in Aquarius, especially the social pressures, social structure of our lives. And with the Sun in Leo, this very subjective personal placement showing where we are individually, it's opposing Saturn. So I kind of see this as potentially triggering like protests or civil unrest. It's just showing that the masses, or where we're at on an individual level, is just very different than the structure, the leadership. This has sort of happened every summer for the last few years, since Pluto and Saturn are in these more wintry signs of Capricorn and Aquarius. We experience this every summer when the inner planets oppose these planets. So I think There has been more civil unrest in summer, generally speaking, around the world. Again, of course, it depends person by person, region by region, but as a whole, collectively, I think there's this kind of civil unrest. The disconnect becomes that much more apparent, when we have aspects like this. So that's what I have for this week. I know that was a lot. I know it was a lot, and I hope you're all doing very well. Um, I have a good feeling about this. Like, even though there are a whole bunch of aspects happening lately that point to major change, particularly economic change. Um, like I said, I feel like we're in a relatively good place as a community, knock on wood, but I think we're reacting to the changes somewhat well. Obviously, it can be scary, especially, I can't even imagine not knowing about astrology and just not being aware of these things before they happen. So of course there's going to be some shock, in response to these changes, maybe disappointment or a little bit of disillusionment. However, generally speaking, I think, I have faith in us. Especially anyone listening to this, you are the one, really doing your homework, going the extra mile by researching stuff like astrology. So I feel like we got this. Like, yes, it is a lot of change, but we've gotten through a lot, not only in the past couple of years, but even in the past 20 years. A lot has happened that has been heavy. This whole Pluto and Capricorn transit that we're almost at the end of. Pluto enters Aquarius March of next year. We're in the final days, the final months of this very long, very heavy, kind of bleakish transit. Pluto's been in Capricorn since fall of 2008 when we had the Great Recession start. So we're getting through it. We have gotten. This is gonna be so cheesy, but we're like diamonds. We've had all this pressure applied to us. Um, I think we're very strong now. Of course, there's people that you'll see online or whatever that are maybe foolish or what have you. There's all these pressures trying to divide us. But I don't think that's completely the truth. I think as a whole, we've grown a lot. We are way less naive than we were back when Pluto was in Sagittarius in the late 90s and early 2000s. I think we've learned a lot. I think we've matured a lot as a society. I really do. And so, yes, there is all this change happening, but we've been in this massive period of change and intensity. So, yes, a lot of this is new, but in a way, it's kind of not. We've been through it. So, I have faith in you. I think we will get through this. We'll be all right. I don't know how it looks for your personal life specifically. If you want a reading, I'd be more than happy to do that. You can check out my website. It's linked in the description. A little self plug there, but yeah, I hope you're well. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you. If there is a topic you'd like me to cover, whether it be a personal reading or just a more general question, I would love to answer or help in any way I can. But thanks for listening, and I wish you well.